right, guys, welcome to the show. Sit back, relax, pucker your booty hole. We got a lot of stuff to get into. So in just a second, I got some big news coming out of Israel and Gaza and Lebanon. Bombshell report not getting nearly enough coverage, but Israel is apparently using illegal chemical weapons in Lebanon. The IDF is now officially occupying South Lebanon as well. We'll talk about that. And the U.S. is perhaps more involved than you would like to think in terms of picking specific targets in Gaza. That is huge. By the way, shout out to Dropsite News, Ryan Grimm and Jeremy Scahill, their new outlet, because they're just releasing amazing story after amazing story. Definitely go follow them. Then later on, we'll get to Elon Musk humiliates himself licking Trump's boots. We got some amazingly cringe images coming out of a rally that they recently did together. Trump goes full bloodthirsty neocon. I'll also react to Kamala Harris and Liz Cheney doing an event together. As you can imagine, I have many thoughts on that front. And then J.D. Vance finally comes out and says what he refused to say when he was on the debate stage, because he's a little weasel boy, as I've called him many times. All right, so without any further ado, we'll jump into it. Everybody do me a big favor, subscribe to the channel. That helps out big time. And also, thank you to everybody who supports the show on Patreon. We're not like Benny Johnson and Tim Pool and all the others that were in that list that came out the other day. We don't take any money from shady billionaires or foreign governments. It's small dollar donations from you guys, and it's default ads on YouTube, and we couldn't do without you. So let's start with this. I got a lot of updates for you coming out of Israel. Things you would not know watching mainstream U.S. media, and this is from friend of the show, Omar Badr. Number one, today Israel killed 4 Lebanese Red Cross medics. Number two, in less than 1 year, Israel killed some 2,000 people in Lebanon, most in just the last 2 weeks. And finally, if this were happening to Israel, it would be headline news. That's exactly right. Now, unfortunately, we're not done talking about all the killing yet. We are just getting warmed up. So this is from Dropsite News. I should be clear that the previous thing here was from October 3rd from Omar Badr. This right here is from October 6th from Dropsite News. At least 68 Palestinians killed in Israeli violence across Gaza since Sunday morning. 68. 68. It used to be a big deal when a number like this came out. Now it barely gets a mention at all, certainly in the mainstream press, because we've become accustomed to the massacres carried out by Israel in Gaza. Hezbollah rockets make first direct hit on Israel's port city of Haifa, injuring at least 10. Israel is once again targeting southern Beirut with heavy airstrikes following new evacuation orders. So again, more on the carnage in a second. I feel like it's not... People have a misleading picture of what's actually going on right now, not only in Gaza, but also in Lebanon, because it doesn't get the wall-to-wall coverage anymore. You have to come to YouTube shows like this in order to get the truth about what's happening. All right, so now let's get to Joe Biden came out and did a press conference. And man, this video right here, I mean, it speaks for itself, but it's also absolutely humiliating and embarrassing. Let's get it.
This week, Senator Chris Murphy said it's certainly a possibility that the Israeli government is not going to sign any diplomatic agreement prior to the election, which is what you have been calling for so long, potentially to try to influence the result. Do you agree? Do you have any worries that Netanyahu may be trying to influence the election and that's why he has not agreed to a diplomatic solution?
In other words, even our dumbass mainstream press has cracked the code. They figured it out. Hey, it's kind of obvious that Netanyahu is trying to screw you over and screw the Democrats over and help Trump. This is the press saying this. And they would be like the last ones to figure it out. They figured it out, and they're asking a question to Biden about it. Here we go. Here's his answer.
No administration has helped Israel more than I have. None. 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 And I think Bibi should remember that. And whether he's trying to influence the election or not, I don't know, but I'm not counting on that.
So his response is to be like, bro, no, seriously, bro. Like, I love you, man. Like, I'm helping you so much, man. I'm giving you all the money and all the weapons in the world to carry out your genocide, bro. Now, whether or not he's trying to help the other guy, I don't know. But I'm not counting on that happening. Joe Biden may literally be the last person in the country to catch on to this and to figure it out. It's not a question. It's not an open debate anymore. We know the answer. We've been warning for months. Others have been warning for months that the October surprise is going to be Netanyahu more directly attacking either Lebanon or Iran or both. We ended up getting a September surprise and an October surprise. And it was attacking Lebanon and attacking Iran. Guys, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? He's just like, look, I mean, this sounds conspiratorial, but now it's time to actually have the conversation. Is he purposely trying to make it so Kamala loses? Is he pissed about being knocked out as the guy, as the nominee? And so now he's like, I'm going to let Bibi do whatever the hell he wants. And if that hurts Kamala, so be it. I'm fine with that. It's a real conversation now. It's a real conversation. The other thing is, as the Vanguard pointed out, they have a theory that maybe Israel is like saying to the U.S. behind the scenes, if you stop sending us money and weapons, we're going to use our nukes on Iran. Or something like that. Because nothing can logically explain this. Even being a dyed-in-the-wool hardcore Zionist like Biden is, even that can't explain getting to this point. Where you're purposely shooting your own party in the dick. Unbelievably cucked. The way he talks about Netanyahu is like Netanyahu's the boss. It's like he's the one giving us billions of dollars and giving us his weapons. Unbelievable. All right, more. So now this is interesting, guys. This is interesting. So Macron comes out the other day, and Macron says, hey, guys, maybe it is time to talk about a weapons embargo to Israel. Now, that's a big deal. A Western leader saying, yeah, perhaps this has gone too far. This is really ugly. Maybe it's the right thing to do a weapons embargo to Israel. So Macron says that, and then Netanyahu immediately kicks into gear. And he does a direct address to Macron. And then wait until you hear what happens next. All right, so listen to this.
I have a message for President Macron. Today, Israel is defending itself on 7 fronts against
defending itself. Israel is defending itself on 7 fronts.
the enemies of civilization. We're fighting in Gaza against Hamas, those savages who murdered, raped, beheaded, and burned our people on October 7th. We're fighting in Lebanon against Hezbollah, the most heavily armed terror organization in the world, which was planning an even greater massacre than October 7th on our northern border, and that has rocketed Israeli towns and cities for nearly a year. We're fighting against the Houthis in Yemen and the Shiite militias in Iraq and Syria that together have launched hundreds of drones and missile attacks against Israel. We're fighting against terrorists in Judea and Samaria who try to murder civilians in the heart of our cities.
Judea and Samaria, by the way, that's a giveaway. You know what Judea and Samaria is? That's the West Bank. That's Palestinian territory. But he calls it Judea and Samaria because he wants to retake it for a greater Israel. He gives away the game with these little things. Like, if you don't know the details about the region, it would go over your head. But if you know the details, he just gives away the game repeatedly.
And we're fighting against Iran, which last week fired over 200 ballistic missiles directly at Israel.
How many casualties were there? Just out of curiosity. How many people were killed? By the way, what did they target? Was it military sites or was it civilian sites? Oh, that's right. Oh, it was military sites. Oh, man. So they targeted military sites and nobody died. And you guys target civilian areas and kill dozens of people, hundreds of people every day in Gaza and Lebanon. I can't stand this guy. Because the thing is, again, when he talks, he knows he's lying. It's not like he just has a different interpretation of what's going on. No. He's lying and he knows he's lying.
And which stands behind the 7-front war against Israel. As Israel fights the forces of barbarism led by Iran, all civilized countries should be standing firmly by Israel's side. Yet President Macron and some other Western leaders are now calling for an arms embargo against Israel. Shame on them.
Shame, sir. Shame. You should applaud and do cartwheels as we bomb babies on a daily basis. What a joke.
Is Iran imposing an arms embargo on Hezbollah, on the Houthis, on Hamas, and on its other proxies? Of course not. The axis of terror stands together.
The axis of terror. Oh my God. He's he's George W. Bush except worse. He's George W. Bush or Dick Cheney if he took human growth hormone and steroids and had a traumatic brain injury.
Countries who supposedly oppose this terror axis call for an arms embargo on Israel. What a disgrace. Well, let me tell you this. Israel will win with or without their support. But their shame will continue long after the war is won. For in defending
their shame. It's shameful. Shameful to call for an arms embargo against a country that's been on a murder orgy spree and has killed 90% civilians within the past year. Guys, I can't stomach this anymore.
Ourselves against this barbarism. Israel is defending civilizations against those who seek to impose a dark age of fanaticism on all of us. Rest assured, Israel will fight until the battle is won, for our sake and for the security of the entire world.
I mean, look at this face. Look at his face. He knows he's a Weasley little liar. He's not being defensive. He's being offensive. And he knows he's massacring civilians on a daily basis, but he doesn't care because he's fully dehumanized the other side. The other side are not humans to him. By the way, where does that sound familiar historically, where you fully dehumanize the other side and kill massive numbers of innocent civilians? Tough one to figure out. All right, so after that, right? So Macron says, hey, maybe let's do a weapons embargo because, I mean, this has gone too far, right? So he does, shame on you, sir. How dare you? And then we get this. This is from Dropsite News. Unconfirmed reports suggest airstrike occurred near a Total gas station on Airport Road in Beirut. Total Energies, a French multinational, operates these stations. Earlier, Prime Minister Netanyahu condemned French President Macron for backing an arms embargo on Israel. So, if this report is accurate, Macron says, hey, we should probably do an arms embargo against Israel because they've gone too far. Netanyahu releases a statement, shame on you, sir. And then they bomb French assets in Beirut. This country is completely and utterly unhinged. It's so ironic every time he says, like, the forces of civilization or enlightenment versus the forces of barbarism and savagery. Like, homie, look in the mirror. You're so savage and barbaric. We need to invent a new word for it. You're in a league of your own right now. All right. Oh, by the way, after that happened, guess what? Macron comes out and he's like, okay, maybe not. Maybe no arms embargo. Oh, my God. I got to be honest with you guys. What does Mossad have on these people, right? Does Mossad have a video of Macron shitting on a teenage girl or something? Like, this is where we're at, right? Where you can come out and say the most obvious thing in the world, you get backlash and your assets get bombed, and then you're like, you know what? I will return to cucking myself to Israel. What the fuck do they have on all these world leaders? That's what I want to know. Because none of them have balls, right? None of them have balls. Jesus Christ. All right, so now let's get to this one. This says a lot, man. This says a lot right here. So Israel apparently used more bunker busters to kill Nasrallah than the U.S. used in the entirety of the 2003 invasion of Iraq. This is one of, honestly, so many facts that paint Israel in the most horrific light imaginable. Even those, remember the 2,000-pound bombs that they were dropping in Gaza? We apparently never used them in cities or civilian areas because we were so concerned about killing too many civilians. Now, look, I'm not doing this to pump up the United States and say, look at our high standards. We're arming and funding Israel, so we're partly responsible for what they're doing. But it does go to show you there's a difference. And when you get to the total and complete and full dehumanization of the other side, as Israel has done to Palestinians and now Arabs more broadly, this is what happens. This is what happens. And they think it's like some massive success when they kill hundreds of innocent civilians to get Nasrallah. All right. Then this is the big story here. This is the big story. This was shared by Trita Parsi on Twitter. Israel is using internationally banned bombs in Lebanon, according to a syndicate of chemists. They say massive destruction in Lebanon shows use of bombs containing depleted uranium. Now, this is something I believe we used in Fallujah. And depleted uranium, it leads to all sorts of health problems. I mean, like horrible birth defects. It's like using basically a toxic chemical poison on the population and not caring about future generations and not caring about what happens in the moment to the people in the region, right? I've also seen some tweets. This is unconfirmed, but I've seen tweets of people in Lebanon saying, I don't know what they're dropping on us, but things smell really funky. And there's this weird chemically smell in there. I don't know if that's directly related to the depleted uranium tips, or that could be white phosphorus or some other sort of chemical weapon. But the bottom line is, as expected, Israel immediately took the gloves off, started bombing civilian populations, and is now going as far and as low and as illegal as using depleted uranium tips. I mean, again, this is going to lead to horrific birth defects down the line for people, and Lord knows how many long-term injuries and casualties you're going to get as a result of using these kinds of illegal weapons. Unbelievable, man. Unbelievable. Every time you think they can't go low, they go lower. All right, here we go. So let's go through this one first. The IDF is greatly expanding its operations in Lebanon. Uqda 36, consisting of Golani, Etziani, 2 armored brigades, and an artillery brigade, was brought up to reinforce the Uqda 98 there. Now, several reserve brigades are on their way up as well. Several villages are now under IDF control. Vast amounts of weaponry and ammunition, mostly from Iran, have been uncovered. The operation is mainly expanding horizontally to cover the entire border. As expected, this is in line with the drive to create a strip that would be sanitized of Hezbollah. Indeed, Chief of Staff Halevi says, in future, we will not allow Hezbollah to base itself near the border again. So far, the IDF has lost 9 soldiers in this operation. That's almost certainly an undercount, I would say. Rockets continue to pound Israel, with over 200 in the last 24 hours. Now the IDF is warning people in villages north of the Litani River to leave their homes. That raised the question of how far north this operation will go. So, in other words, as Ryan Grimm sums up here, effectively, Israel is promising a long-term occupation of southern Lebanon. So now they're stealing more territory in the same way that they stole the Golan Heights, which is Syrian territory, the same way they've illegally occupied Gaza and then made it an open-air prison, the same way they're expanding in the West Bank, which is Palestinian territory. Now they are occupying southern Lebanon, but the even more chilling part of that is they're telling people north of the Litani River to evacuate. Well, north of the Litani River, in other words, like where the Litani River is, there's a sliver of Lebanon underneath that, and that's what Israel is currently occupying. But if they're telling people north of the Litani River to evacuate, how far north are they going to go? How much Syrian territory are they going to take? I mean, excuse me, not Syrian. How much Lebanese territory are they going to take? They're doing it again. They are doing it again, guys. They're doing it again. We witnessed it in Gaza. It's happening right now in the West Bank as well. And now they're doing it in Lebanon. Completely and utterly unhinged. And by the way, this is what happens when the U.S. refuses to pull the leash. This is what happens. He's going to go as far as we allow him to go. Even Ronald Reagan pulled the leash better. George H.W. Bush pulled the leash better. I've never seen anything like this. All right. So now I'll show you a little PBS NewsHour report here. So you could be forgiven for thinking, oh, wait, is this another report on what's happening in Gaza? No. They're just doing to Lebanon what they did to Gaza. Watch this.
Exhausted and traumatized, Lebanon streets are filled with a sudden wave of homeless and hungry souls. Schools out indefinitely. They're all needed to house the more than 1.2 million already displaced from their homes by the violence. On every available surface, mattresses to sleep on, trees repurposed for laundry. Those unlucky enough to find the shelters full are ending up on the street, in the baking heat and pouring rain.
Everything is destroyed back home. It's an all-out war. We fled under constant airstrikes.
Khalid and his 5 young kids fled north a few days ago. They've nowhere else to go.
Here it's safer, but it's a disaster for the children and women. It's so bad. Look at where they change their clothes. And there are no toilets.
Over the past few days, tens of thousands of people have flooded up this coastal highway, escaping the growing list of towns and villages in the south of Lebanon that Israel says it may strike. As that evacuation zone grows, so too does uncertainty over when and if they'll be able to go home.
This is what they're running from. Air bombardment and shelling across southern Lebanon, and increasingly in and around the capital Beirut too. Lebanese fear soon nowhere will be safe. Last night, residents cowered in terror as Israel's warplanes spread a line of explosive fire through Beirut's southern suburbs, on the hunt for assassinated Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah's presumed successor, Hashem Safieddine. Today in Tehran, a rare appearance by the supreme leader to praise Nasrallah amidst rumors of his burial in secret. All while Iran awaits retaliation for its massive missile strike on Israel this week. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vows Iran will pay.
By the way, what they're discussing in terms of a response would be beyond devastating. They're discussing bombing, like, basically Iran's oil facilities and their nuclear sites, which is like, and Iran has said, hey, if you guys do that, in retaliation, we'll bomb all the U.S. bases in the region, and we'll also bomb, like, Western oil infrastructure. That's what we're going to do if you do that to us. So, look, we always say, like, oh my God, this might escalate out of control. It already has escalated out of control. We are there. There's already been so many lives ruined, so many people killed, and there are no signs of stopping. Because we have a senile old Zionist freak who's running our country and letting Netanyahu get away with anything and everything.
Lebanese fear they're already paying the price for this regional conflict. As leaders grandstand, everyday lives here fall apart. This restaurant is making daily free meals for thousands of displaced people inside her. 29-year-old Noor has thrown herself into the relief effort.
Sometimes people are crying, sometimes are asking for food, sometimes people are asking for clothes or shelter to where to sleep. Sometimes it's someone you know or your friend at school, at the old school, we're neighbors. So when you hear that someone is dead or someone is injured and you can't help them, this is so sad.
Just down the road in Ain el-Delb, community answered the call to action too. They thought they were safe here. They never imagined they'd be victims themselves. Julia Ramadan and her mother were among those buried in a mass funeral days later. Coffin after coffin, a community in mourning. Julia had been volunteering, making food for displaced families. She'd come home from her student accommodation in Beirut after the suburbs were badly bombed, thinking it safer.
When she called, she said, and I didn't think it was important at the time, but she said, if I have to die, I want to die next to you.
Last Sunday, after delivering sandwiches to those seeking shelter, the family came home to rest. Then, 2 missiles smashed into the building. Julia's brother Ashraf was buried under the rubble for hours awaiting rescue. He was still there when his friends, calling to him, told him his mother was dead.
I thought maybe she died of fear, but I thought Julia would make it out because she's strong. They found Julia at midnight. She had suffocated. When I saw my mother and sister's bodies at the hospital, they didn't have a single scar, but not being able to breathe under the rubble killed them.
Having lost the sister he calls his closest confidant, Ashraf is struggling to keep going.
I'm sure she was a vicious Hezbollah militant, right? On the verge of an imminent attack against civilians in Israel, right? I'm sure that's the case. Guys, they're doing it again. They're doing it again. And we're just sitting here. They're doing it again.
And to forgive.
All you Western governments who claim to support Lebanon should stop providing Israel with weapons. How did she threaten Israel's security and peace?
Everybody knows the solution. Everybody knows the solution.
I was texting to her a few minutes ago.
You still send her text messages when you're thinking about her?
Oh. Jesus, poor guy. How many people, man? How many? We're just going to let him do it again? Is that what's going to happen? We're just going to let him do it again? All right, more. We may have discussed this. Israeli strike kills 4 paramedics near hospital as southern Lebanon hospitals forced to shut down. Gee, where have I heard that before? Hospitals being forced to shut down because of relentless bombardment? An Israeli airstrike killed 4 paramedics outside a hospital in Marjayun, a majority Christian town previously spared from conflict. So I'm sure all of the evangelical fundamentalist Christians in the U.S. who are, let's call it what it is, Christian supremacists, I'm sure they're going to, their heart's really bleeding and there's a tear in their eye for what's going on to Lebanese Christians. Oh, that's right. They don't care and they won't say a word about it. And if anything, they'll enthusiastically support Israel's bombing. All right, so let's talk about this. There's this new thing that came out, the Gaza healthcare letters. And basically the idea behind it is 99 doctors, Western doctors, who were in Gaza, who basically are saying, look, we're one of the only group of people who everybody can agree were like an objective viewpoint on the ground in Gaza. And they basically share their thoughts about what they've seen. So it's a letter to President Biden and Vice President Harris open letter from American medical professionals who served in Gaza. 99 of these doctors. And they go on to say, like, first and foremost, the death toll in Gaza is over 118,000. So the idea that, you go with the UN number of, 42,000, or you go with the Euromed Monitor number, which is about 48,000, or I think it's about 50 now. They say, look, that's a drastic undercount. That's only the people we can absolutely verify beyond any doubt have been killed. The actual number is probably over 118,000 people in Gaza. So absolutely grotesque. I mean, what else is there to say about something like that? And then they have their own, so they say that, by the way, that's 5.4% of Gaza's population. This is their estimate from what they've seen. And then they have, some descriptions on the ground. Quote, I've never seen such horrific injuries on such a massive scale with so few resources. Our bombs are cutting down women and children by the thousands. Their mutilated bodies are a monument to cruelty. So that's one doctor. They say here that with only marginal exceptions, everyone in Gaza is sick, injured, or both. This includes every national aid worker, every international volunteer, and probably every Israeli hostage, every man, woman, and child. They go on to say they had like special accommodations going into Gaza. They had like more food and better food than anybody that's there. And they said even with what we had, we were still all losing a tremendous amount of weight, because even that wasn't enough. Never mind, what do you think it's like for, your regular folks in Gaza? What do you think it's like? Virtually every child under the age of 5 whom we encountered both inside and outside the hospital had both a cough and watery diarrhea. We found cases of jaundice, indicating hepatitis A infection under such conditions, in nearly every room of the hospitals in which we served, and in many of our healthcare colleagues in Gaza. An astonishingly high percentage of our surgical incisions became infected from the combination of malnutrition, impossible operating conditions, lack of basic sanitation supplies such as soap, and lack of surgical supplies and medications, including antibiotics. Malnutrition led to widespread spontaneous abortions, underweight newborns, and an inability of new mothers to breastfeed. They basically say, look, all the water in Gaza is poisonous. It's not treated properly. So people are drinking tainted water. This person says, this is a pediatric nurse, every day I saw babies die. They had been born healthy, their mothers were so malnourished that they could not breastfeed, and we lacked formula or clean water to feed them, so they starved. Again, all right, little warning for this next sentence you're about to hear, but this is Dr. Mark Perlmutter, orthopedic and hand surgeon. He says, quote, Gaza was the first time I held a baby's brains in my hand. The first of many. They go on to say to Joe Biden and Western governments, look, you have to cut off the weapons to Israel. You have to cut off the weapons to Israel. It's the only way to stop what's going on. Now, the crazy thing is, they're probably just going to ignore this. They're going to ignore that 99 American doctors wrote a letter directly to them saying the death toll is 118,000. Everybody is starving in Gaza, and we saw children mowed down by the thousands. They're probably just going to ignore this. They're probably going to act like, it's nothing. So, look, go read the entire thing to get the full picture of what's in here, but it is absolutely devastating. It's not just heartbreaking and a tragedy. It is a crime. This is a crime. This is genocidal. This is violating international laws. I mean, it goes without saying that anybody with a brain and a basic moral conscience would say, Netanyahu, Ben-Gvir, Smotrich, all the top Israeli generals, they have to be locked up. In a world that makes sense where the law matters, they would have to be locked up. I'm past the point of just cut off the money and cut off the weapons. No, lock them up. And at the same time, those Gaza letters come out, right? Axios writes an article. Here's the headline they tweeted. 1 year after October 7th attacks, Netanyahu is on a winning streak. He's on a winning streak, y'all. I'm just trying to imagine in like 1941, some mainstream paper writing, Adolf Hitler is on a winning streak. I mean, that's what this is the equivalent of at this point. I got another one for you. This is in Haaretz by somebody named Yossi Melman. He says, here's the title, How Israel Should Attack Iran. I mean, it's a foregone conclusion. Of course, we're going to start another colossal war, but here's how they should do it. Okay, great, good stuff. Now we get to more on U.S. complicity. So Jeremy Scahill of Dropsite News says the following. According to Israeli officials, Antony Blinken approved policy to bomb Gaza aid trucks. Following the meetings, Bezalel Smotrich said the policy was aid trucks hijacked by Hamas and its organizations would be bombed from the air. This is, I mean, what's the name of that celebrity chef who was killed? Like, this is, according to them, the U.S. knew about it, Blinken knew about it, and he said, yeah, you know, if you can quote-unquote link it to Hamas, sure, go ahead, bomb it. And here we are. So this means Blinken and the U.S., we are complicit in the targeting of UN aid workers, people delivering humanitarian assistance. There is a special place in hell for all of these grotesque, repulsive ghouls. All right, here we go. Then at the same time, there's U.S. airstrikes targeting multiple cities in Yemen. We're aiding Israel with their attack on Yemen. Remember, the port of Hodeida was bombed the other day. They claim, oh, we're getting like 15 different Houthi targets. Yeah, I'm sure. In the same way that Israel's always getting the Hamas targets and the Hezbollah targets, and you just pretend like the civilians don't exist. I'm sure it's super specific and targeted. Like, this has totally blown up the notion of like precision by the West in our wars. It's just totally obliterated that notion. You have an Israeli airstrike on September 21st, hit a school in Gaza City, killing 22 civilians, including 13 children and 6 women. One of them was 6 months pregnant. The strike aimed to kill a single Hamas official, the BBC said. And remember, so the guy who we're doing this for, right? The one who we're green lighting all of this. Who are we doing it for? Well, here he is about the U.S. invasion of Iraq. Here's what he was saying at the time would happen with the U.S. toppling Saddam Hussein. Watch this.
If you take out Saddam's regime, I guarantee you that it will have enormous positive reverberations on the region.
Enormous positive reverberations. Yeah, this is a guy who should really be going to the mat for and who should be arming to the teeth.
And I think that people sitting right next door in Iran, young people, and many others will say, the time of such regimes, of such despots, is gone. There is a new age. Something new is happening.
And that is speculation on your part, or you have some evidence to that effect?
You know, I was asked the same question in 1986. I had written a book in which I had said that the way to deal with terrorist regimes, well, with terror, was to deal with the terrorist regimes. And the way to deal with the terrorist regimes, among other things, was to apply military force against them.
The way we did in Afghanistan.
The way, for example, I want to answer your question.
I guess I'm running out of time, so I quickly was trying to get there. We've done, I think, what you proposed in Afghanistan, yet I haven't seen that sort of neighborhood effect.
Well, I think there's been an enormous effect. The effect was, we were told that there would be a contrary effect. First of all, people said that there would be tens of thousands of people streaming into Afghanistan, zealots who would be outraged by America's action, and this would produce a counter-reaction in the Arab world.
But I think you're not saying that when you take an action like we did in Afghanistan, we're going to see all the other countries just fold.
No, what we saw is something else. First of all, we saw everybody streaming out of Afghanistan. The second thing we saw is all the Arab countries and many Muslim countries trying to side with America, trying to be okay with America. The application of power is the most important thing in winning the war on terrorism. If I had to say, what are the 3 principles of winning the war on terror? It's like, what are the 3 principles of real estate, the 3 L's, location, location, location? The 3 principles of winning the war on terror are the 3 W's, winning, winning, and winning. The more victories you amass, the easier the next victory becomes. The first victory in Afghanistan makes the second victory in Iraq that much easier. The second victory in Iraq will make the third victory that much easier too, but it may change the nature of achieving that victory. It may be possible to have implosions taking place. I don't guarantee it, Mr. Turney, but I think it makes it more likely.
Wrong about everything. Wrong. I like the part where he was describing, like, people say, like, oh, you're going to get all these crazy terrorists and jihadists who rush in and start to try to fight the U.S. That's literally exactly, this is how we got ISIS, you fucking freak. So he's an idiot, he's a moron, he's wrong about everything on top of being a bloodthirsty neocon warmonger. And then finally, another one of these unintended consequences. You ready? This is incredible. Just a day after Iran's missile attack on the U.S. and Israeli airbase in Israel, Saudi Arabia's foreign minister meets with Iran's president, declaring that Saudi Arabia wants to, quote, permanently close the chapter on our differences. Ladies and gentlemen, there has now been peace established between Iran and Saudi Arabia because of how fucking unhinged Israel and Netanyahu are. Guys, look, we're here on the anniversary of October 7th. A horrific attack that killed way too many civilians, right? And what news do I have to deliver to you? Oh, that's right. Israel is now using depleted uranium tips, and they're occupying southern Lebanon, and they're bombing more innocent women and children and innocent men on a daily basis. Like, we get it. You know, what they went through was bad. That doesn't mean that day in, day out, you can inflict October 7th on everybody else in the region and still virtue signal like you're the good guy. You're not. You're on the offense. It's never been more clear. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.